49ers Ultimate Report. This is John J., your 49ers reporter, opinionist, analyst, and die-hard fan. Welcome to my second episode of today's 49ers Ultimate Report. Earlier, I did a live stream talking about 49ers news. Now, I have a second show today, and it's going to be a really good one because it's a guest. You already know who he is. He needs no introduction. Let's just bring him right in. What is up, Shifty? How are you doing?
How's it going, John? Good to see you, man. Great to be back, as always, talking 49er football, and it's going to be a good time, and can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, so before we start the episode, I want to say thank you for watching the program, always supporting it with all your donations, your chats in the chat. So I really appreciate your great support, and I always want to make sure I always shout out all of my subscribers, all of my viewers for supporting this great YouTube channel and also this wonderful program. Of course, just we always do. Everyone knows who you are, but I want you to remind everybody and the new viewers who you are, what you do, and where they can find you.
Cool. Yep. So I'm Shifty's 49ers Talk. You will, if you search that on YouTube, I hopefully come right up. But honestly, I'm a diehard 49er fan. Love talking 49ers, whether it's obviously during the season, previewing and talking about the games. I love to live stream the games. So if you do want to see someone who definitely gets a little animated watching the games, that's me. But I love the season. I love free agency, the draft. I'm a big draft guy. Big fan. I make content. I try to put out at least maybe 3 to 4 videos a week. So far, lately, it's been more of a focus on free agency, and then moving towards the draft and whatnot as well. But search for me on YouTube, Shifty's 49ers Talk. And if you want to see my opinions on the game, it's a good time.
Yeah. Just like always, what's up, David? It's Niners all day. My boy David's always in here. And of course, my other boy, Crazy Juice. You guys are always in here. And of course, shout out to formerly known as J-Mouse, now 49ers Faithful Report. He has started his own YouTube channel. Shout out to 49ers Faithful Report. I will watch your content later once I am done with the show. So I hope you're having a good day, man. And everybody else, feel free to leave your comments and anything you want us to answer, let us know. Of course, Damien Lee always hopping out. This is my
Damien. Good to see you, man.
Damn, yeah, Damien Lee right there. He always talked about during the week of the Cowboys that he would say all the Niners out there in Dallas more than the Cowboys. So it's always fun when Damien Lee shows you Niners are everywhere. 49er fans are everywhere. All right, we're going to start with something a little bit different. I started this on my podcast. We're going to start off with something a little bit different. What's on your mind, Shifty? Basically, this is a segment where you get to just talk what's on your mind about the 49ers. So I just want to know what's on your mind so far as we enter towards the combine and free agency.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big question. I think for me, ultimately, like the number one thing to figure out is what's going to happen with Garoppolo. I mean, I know that we've seen reports where I think Schefter said, oh, maybe he'll come back, and maybe some others have mentioned that, but I think there's basically zero chance of that happening. Just with Jimmy's cap hit, like there's just no way, especially when we want to bring back guys like Tomlinson, DJ Jones, Arden Key, so on and so forth. So I think the chances of Jimmy getting traded are basically, if we can't trade him, I honestly think we could probably end up cutting him just because of his cap hit is just way too much. Ultimately, I do think he'll get traded, and it's something that I did talk about in a video a little while ago, but there aren't actually that many great quarterbacks available this offseason. And you might be thinking, well, Brady and Rodgers, I think Brady's retired. I think he's done. Rodgers, I don't think he leaves Green Bay. There was rumors about Russell Wilson, and I think he's going to stay in Seattle. I think Seattle would be crazy to let him go. And then you have Deshaun Watson, where is he a great young quarterback? Yes, but he has so many off the field issues. So it kind of narrows it down. And then when you also look at the draft, like you have a couple of quarterbacks who like look relatively promising, but if you put any of these guys in the draft, let's say this year's draft, in last year's draft, they're going to be drafted. They'll be the last quarterback drafted. So even Kenny Pickett would be drafted after Mac Jones in the first round, I mean. So that kind of narrows it down when you're a team who needs a veteran quarterback or a team who just needs a good quarterback. So I think that ultimately does bump up Jimmy's value. But other than that, I mean, of course, we're going to speculate on Jimmy G and what's going to happen. But beyond that, for me, I'm a huge draft guy. So it's going to be really interesting to see the direction that the 49ers go in the draft. And then, of course, I would like us in terms of free agency to kind of do what we did last year. And last year, I think it seemed like the mentality was, let's just bring everyone back. And I hope that we do that again. So Laken Tomlinson, DJ Jones, Arden Key, I want to bring those, to me, are the top 3 guys to bring back. Raheem Mostert's probably number 4. And then I wouldn't mind throwing like a 1-year contracts to, let's say, Jason Verrett, Jaquaski Tart. I think those guys, if we could bring them back on 1-year deals, would be pretty good. Oh, the other guy, and John, I know you're not as big a fan as I am, but I am a huge K'Wan Williams fan, so I know we'll probably disagree there a little bit, but I really hope we bring him back, because to me, I think he's a really good player, but so there's a lot. We're in this weird part of the offseason where moves haven't started happening yet, but there's just so much to speculate about. So,
yeah. Damien Lee says that, what's up, guys? I spoke to both of you all today. All right. Damien Lee has some information. Jimmy Ward already restructured his contract to get more players, so that's a positive. So that will reduce the cap.
Oh, he did? Huh? That's cool.
And then, of course, anybody here on what's up with D Ford? And yeah, we will speak about that. Also, David says quarterbacks, and I want to touch upon this after I read it. Quarterbacks are scarce for the next 2 drafts. Free agents are unproven. We might get more than the Hey, for whatever the reason, David's always with that bag of chips, and then of course bring back DJ Jones. Yep. So first, what's on my mind is that as Damien Lee said it perfectly, let's reduce the cap, and let's start off with $0 over the cap. Then we can start to move from Jimmy. Once we're able to restructure, because I know what's going to happen is that that many teams, just like the 49ers, who are over the cap, are going to either speak to a lot of their high-paid players and see if they can move a lot of the money to incentives money and bonus money. So their base salary will still be a good base salary. I won't be surprised if, maybe Armstead, and I hope he does, is able to restructure that contract so we can also lose a lot of that dead money, and then we're able to sign that. Once Jimmy's off the books, that's $27 million. $27 million. I know his base salary is 24. His overall is 27 and a half overall. Once that number moves up, then we can focus on our free agents. So that's the first thing that's on my mind. The second thing that's on my mind is that when I look at all these insiders talking about Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, the very simple answer, but for whatever reason, 49er fans are a little bit, hot-headed, they just don't care. It's not going to happen. So we do need to put all our faith in Trey Lance. Trey Lance is not as bad as you think. I did a video, and Greg Cosell, I'm a huge fan of Greg Cosell, made it clear what he sees in the tape of Trey Lance. And even though there's very little tape in college and very little tape of this season, there's just enough tape to see how he's gonna play. So that's another thing that's on my mind. And last but not least, we do need to focus on, of course, the secondary and our right side of the line. So that's what's on my mind. Anything else that's on your mind?
Well, I'm actually looking at some of the comments coming through, and Damien Lee, Jacoby Brissett as a backup, I think would be number one. I think he'd be a pretty solid backup. My guy is for sure Tyrod Taylor. I think it's one of those moves that makes just so much sense, where it kind of reminds me of last offseason when Alex Mack was a free agent. I think everyone kind of knew he would probably sign with San Francisco. And I think what's probably going to happen is Tyrod Taylor will sign with the 49ers in the offseason. Now, when it comes to restructuring, guys, yes, I think we need to restructure Armstead, possibly Kittle too. But I think when it comes to Trent Williams and Fred Warner, and I'm not like a cap expert, but I think that if we wait a year or two to restructure them, we would end up saving more money. Now, I could be wrong on that, and please feel free to correct me if I am. But I don't think it would be better if we waited on those guys. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the question in everyone's mind, it's obviously Jimmy. What's going to happen? Where's he going to go? And then, as you mentioned, it's Trey Lance. So for me, if I ultimately, I do believe in Trey Lance, and I think that this coming season, Trey Lance, in terms of throwing the football, will be as good as Jimmy Garoppolo was last year, if not better. Now, of course, as you mentioned, John, he hasn't played a ton of football, so we're going to have to expect there to be some bumps in the road. But overall, I think Trey can bring us a lot of things that we haven't seen in the last couple of years, like in terms of like throwing the ball deep. We saw that in the Texans game where he hit Debo for that huge touchdown pass. And then, of course, what Trey can do with his legs. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Now, when you talk about Rodgers and Brady, I mean, for me, Rodgers is absolute no-go. I mean, there was that whole potential report where they're saying like he might want to be the highest paid player and all this stuff, and it's like, well, that immediately just crossed him off the list here. But Brady's the one I go a little bit back and forth on. Now, look, I love Trey Lance, and I think he's the future, the long-term future. But if Brady was available, I think it'd be very hard to say no. But ultimately, I think Brady's done. So I don't really want to think too much about that scenario because I just don't think it's going to happen. But yeah, there's a lot of like different moving parts here because as much as I want to bring back a lot of these players, maybe the front office is thinking differently. So as much as I want to bring back Lakin, I want to bring back DJ Jones, I want to bring back K1, I want to bring back Arden Key, maybe they're thinking of other guys that they could bring in. So maybe they're thinking like, hey, we put a lot of focus on the defensive line. Maybe we should focus on the secondary. Maybe we try and bring in a Stephon Gilmour. Now, whether you agree with that or not, maybe they might mix it up a little bit. So I'm kind of curious to see how they handled the offseason.
All right. I want to say hello to a few people who just hopped in. My boy Tommy Huxley. What is up, man? He says smoked Versett, LOL. He is the comedian in my chat, always being goofy. He's a really good dude. Shout out to Tommy Huxley. All right. Crazy Juice says bring back Arden Key. I like Arden Key, but as I mentioned, something's telling me we might let him go. I think Charles Omena, who is a pass rusher, so he'll probably be even more cheaper because Arden Key had a really good second half of the season and he had a good playoff, run. So he and his agent, may do like a Kerry Hyder. We want a little bit more money. We'll see what happens. And with that, Damien Lee says we need Eric Armstead, Trent Warner, and Kittle to fix their salary. They will have $28 million. All right, we'll see how Parag Marate, whatever his name is, figures out that those contract situations. Crazy Juice says definitely not going to happen. Damien Lee says, I hope Jimmy G takes the Jeopardy job. Wow, that is a funny thing. I had to laugh, but yeah, that's Aaron Rodgers. So that's about it. Anyway, let's move on. So we had a little bit of some small news. The 49ers hired Nick Sorensen, formerly with the Jaguars, but spent most of his time coaching with the Seattle Seahawks. So I don't know if you know a lot about him, but what are your thoughts of this signing, or are they just trying to just add coaches to the coaching staff?
I'll be honest, I don't know a thing about this guy, but I think the coaching staff, what's happened in the offseason has been really interesting just because, I mean, there's been a number of guys who've left, obviously. There was, like Mike McDaniel, Rich Gangarello. I think Betcher was another guy who left, who was a defensive coach. And then Embry was the tight ends coach, and now for me, what's kind of big news is that Bobby Turner, the long time running back coach, who's coached with the Shanahans, Mike and then Kyle, is potentially retiring. I think I read a tweet from Adam Schefter that he is going to have like a surgery, and that might cause him to not coach this year. But ultimately, I think when we do have a lot of key coaches in place. So obviously Shanahan, then D'Amico, Anthony Lynn, Chris Kasurik, there's a lot of guys. And I actually really do like Leonard Hankerson as the new wide receiver coach. As much as I did like Wes Welker, I think Welker played a very specific role when he was a wide receiver in the league. Whereas I think Hankerson maybe moved around a little bit more. So maybe Hankerson has a bit more knowledge in terms of wide receivers overall. But yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, what's kind of, I don't want to say concerning, but what's on my mind is the fact that we haven't filled in the special teams coach. And there was a couple of guys I had in mind, and clearly they're thinking in another direction. And to me, it wouldn't surprise me if the assistant special teams coach just gets promoted. Or else if they will try and look outside the organization, because for a number of years, our special teams has not been good. So a part of me is thinking, hey, I'd like to look outside. Maybe we can bring someone in. But at this point in the game, I mean, we're I feel like most teams have their coaching staff filled. So it's an interesting one. But at the end of the day, we have our core guys in place, and so I think we do have a really good coaching staff, but it is like a little weird that there's still positions open, especially like a special teams coordinator.
I think if the Niners don't find a special teams coach to take over the job, I think they're going to promote. I think his name is Matthew Harper. I got to go check, to make that 100%. But I think that's the name of him. What I do know about Nick Sorensen, basically it says, so basically he started coaching with the Seattle Seahawks in 2013 and was with the team all the way to 2020 as an assistant special teams coach, assistant defensive back coach, and then the secondaries coach. So he held many positions with the Seattle Seahawks. And then when Urban Meyer got the job, he was hired as the special teams coordinator. So as I mentioned, he has special teams experience. This could be someone that could, be part of that special teams, as an assistant. So we'll see what happens. So as I mentioned, I do not know a lot about him as well, but we've been hiring some coaches. And then there's another coach that was just hired, but I don't have the information yet. I'll probably talk about it tomorrow on my show. So we'll see what happens. But as I mentioned, like you said, this was just like a weird story that just popped in, and hopefully he has a really good job. And I just wanted to just talk about it for a little bit while we move. And now, after talking about this, let's move on to my main story that I talked about on my channel. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. But I don't know. Hold on. Let me put up the question. Here we go. So, Greg Cosell, I don't know if you know who he is, but I'm a huge fan of him. Talked about with Matt Mayoko on Sunday on the NBC Bay Area YouTube channel, but it was a pre-recorded interview during the Super Bowl, but they posted it on the YouTube channel yesterday. And Greg Cosell, who's a huge mind of film, and he also works at NFL Films. He's one of the top directors up there, and he watches film all the time, said Trey Lance gives the 49ers more to the offense. So I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you agree with Greg Cosell that and I 100%, I want to say right now, I agree with Greg Cosell. I like him. He's very knowledgeable. Last year, he talked about all the other quarterbacks, but one quarterback he said that he liked the most, but he was very raw, was Trey Lance. He said that Trey Lance in 5 years will be a guy who, whatever team picks him up, he's a developmental project, but he will be a really good quarterback. So I just want to get your thoughts on, Greg Cosell's comments.
Sure, absolutely. I think number one, well, before I get into that, David has a great suggestion. We should hire you as the special teams coordinator. I mean, why not, right? You'll be better than Richard Hightower. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, because Tommy Huxley said Low Tower was so, and that's why David said the comment. So yeah, shout out to those guys. I want to say
Hey,
what's up.
Wishnowski kicked the ball. There you go.
I want to say what's up to Awesome Kid, and I want to say what's up to Seahawks Eddie, Seahawks fan, but he's a cool, very mellow, relaxful Seahawks fan. So yeah. Oh yeah.
With regards to like Trey Lance, yes, I do. I mean, I think it definitely in theory, he brings a lot more to the offense because there's so many different things that you can do with Trey Lance on the field. Now, the big question mark is because he didn't really play in 2020 because of COVID. He played what 2.5 or so games last season. Is that he hasn't played a ton of football, but if he can like refine his ability to like read defenses and whatnot, he does bring a lot because at the end of the day, like I think you really want to have a guy who, and I think this is something the 49ers, when they look for their guys who have so much versatility, they want to be able to have a lineup where they have, let's say, their weapons out there, but you have no idea what's coming. So if you have, let's say, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Juszczyk, you have Trey Lance, and maybe you have some speed receiver, like you wouldn't even know, like, let's say those guys are in the huddle. The defense is like, we have no clue what be coming at us. Like, it could be a power run, it could be a wide zone run with Debo, it could be a deep pass. And I think with Trey Lance, he opens up a lot of other things where he's able to throw the ball like farther and deeper, much more effectively than Jimmy was, And although I was a Garoppolo fan for sure, a lot of times when Jimmy would throw it deep, the ball would always just sail. Whereas when I look at that play against the Texans, when Trey Lance threw it to Debo Samuel, like he threw the ball like 40 yards or something. But normally when you see quarterbacks throw it that deep, like the ball kind of leaves the screen of the TV. But like when Trey threw it, it was just like a dart for like 40 yards. So, but then you combine the fact that what he can do with his legs. And then there's just so many different options. And I'm sure Shanahan is just like in the offseason thinking about like all the different, formations and plays that he can come up with where you're just like, you don't know who's going to get the ball. You don't know how we're going to attack you. And I think that's something that Trey Lance does a lot better than Jimmy. Whereas Jimmy, he has his upsides for sure. I mean, quick release. He can be accurate, although he misses some wide open guys. But I think the biggest thing that Trey brings is that if you're a defensive coordinator on any given play, if you're a defensive player as well, you just have no clue what's going to be coming at you. Like there could be any number of things. If you have like running back, fullback, tight end, 2 receivers, you're just like, yeah, I mean, maybe they run it up the gut, or maybe it's like a crazy play action, or maybe Trey takes off with it. We don't know. So I think that's like a huge bonus of having a guy like Trey. Now, I think really the big question mark is how does he develop as a passer? How does he develop reading defenses? Because and I think early on in the season, there's going to be moments where we're like maybe scratching our head a little bit. I think some fans might start getting a little frustrated, but this is a guy who hasn't played a lot in 2 years. So I think we're going to have to be patient, and hopefully, the run game, hopefully the defense will be enough to carry us to wins while Trey is learning to play the NFL game, because he's a little bit behind guys like Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson because they've played more. But I do think ultimately, like Trey, there's a lot of things I really like about Trey Lance, and even like whether it's his physical ability, but even like the intangibles. There's a lot of things. The really funny thing that it was when Trey came in. I think it was like week 4, week 5. Against the Seahawks, when at the home game against the Seahawks, when Jimmy got hurt, and I think it was like one of his first plays. It was like a play action bootleg, goes to throw it to Kittle, and it was like a simple screen pass, but Trey misses it, and Kittle's like, "Hey man, like no big deal," and Trey is like, "No, if I miss that again, then come at me," but that's like ownership and that's leadership right there. So I think Trey is. The future's bright. He's got a bunch of great weapons. I'm kind of rambling on a bit here, but I think he gives us a lot more to the offer. Like the potential with Trey Lance is just insane,
Yeah. So I want to read this quote from Greg Cosell. It was on my earlier live stream just a few hours ago, but basically this is basically the quote, and I'm going to read it, word by word. But basically he says that the design boot action with Trey Lance is basically going to be better than Jimmy Garoppolo because Garoppolo was not good throwing on the run. And I think that's one thing about Kyle Shanahan, why they did not do a lot of bootlegs with him. Trey Lance will be better than most people, believe. Trey brings a secondary dimension and action scrambling ability to the table, which Garoppolo did not. So basically, again, you're seeing Garoppolo was not the best when it came to his feet. He also says that Lance just gives you more, and I think you will see this element in the offense. At the same time, another thing that Greg Cosell said, this is very important. Game by game is basically Trey Lance will change every week. One game he will probably run a lot. We may see him like a Lamar Jackson one week, and we'll see him more like a like a like a Drew Brees, game by game situation, drive by drive situation. So what Greg Cosell is basically saying is that you're not going to see the same Trey Lance. You're going to see different Trey Lances, and that's going to make all the defense scared. And he sees the film, he sees what everyone is not seeing. Those who are saying, "Oh, Trey Lance is not ready," but it's a reminder why he is ready. So I wanted to read that to let people understand that Greg Cosell, you can take it by the book. He knows his stuff. And a lot of people who said, "Oh, he's just, like everybody." No, he knows his stuff. That's why I talked about it, and I wanted to get your thoughts about it. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Yes, if I could say one more thing about Trey. Now, it's no secret that the guy, he can run. If I could give advice to Trey, and not that I've played NFL quarterback, so who am I? But the one thing which I don't like, and I saw this when he was at North Dakota State, and I saw this much more so in the Arizona game, is he took some hits in that game. Whereas, look, this is a 17-game season, and then you have playoffs, and we're a team that's expected to be in the playoffs. So when you're the quarterback, as much as I respect the fact that he wants to make a play, like, I think there's times where he needs to learn to be like, hey, maybe I slide, or maybe I run out of bounds. Because I think it was against the Cardinals, man, it seemed like he was getting beat up the whole game long. I saw it in college, where in college he was like bigger than a lot of these other guys, but in the NFL he could learn a lot from your like Russell Wilsons and whatnot, where like if you notice like Russell Wilson or even Mahomes, they don't really take big hits. Yet more Wilson like will make plays with his leg, but like you just can't take those hits when, if it's like week 3 and we're playing the Lions, if it's the second quarter and we're winning by 10 points, like you don't have to pick up that first down at the risk of taking a big shot. Whereas I think it's maybe recognizing that a little bit, because he's so important. Like, he's the future of the franchise. And I think he can be the guy to lead us to like a lot of success. So I think just being aware of that, just where it's like, hey, yeah, make a play with your legs, but we need you out there. So like, don't take those crazy shots.
Yeah. Crazy Juice says, "Ayukin that like button." Appreciate that. We have my boy Niner by Nature, who's not here at this moment. He says Debo that like button. So Crazy Juice has Ayukin that like button. Appreciate that. I like those little fun puns and stuff. Also, it is now time for you guys to ask your questions. If anything pops up, we will ask it, and we'll give you our thoughts on that. But we have a few more topics to get through. So let's talk about free agency. Free agency is about, I think, like 17 days away. So we're getting close to that day, and we're probably about 12, 13 days away from the legal tampering day, the legal tamper, period where people can start negotiating and making deals. But what is the biggest free agency, need for the 49ers? What do we really need to upgrade this free agency? Secondary, linebacker, defensive line, offensive line, quarterback, wide receiver, running back. What is what they need to address in the free agency?
Man, that's a good question. And I think a lot of this comes down to who we might be able to like bring back before free agency opens. Now, ultimately, I I would want to bring back DJ Jones, Arden Key, and Laken Tomlinson. So if we are able to bring back those three guys, then I think you got to look at corner and safety, just like Wanda Brown is saying. Completely agree. But when it comes to corner, I don't think we're going to spend big. Like, I don't think we're not going to get a JC Jackson from New England. We're not going to get a Carlton Davis from Tampa Bay. I think more so the guys, and I just did a video on this, and feel free to take a look, but I think the guys that we're going to want to pick up are those guys who just finished their rookie contract, who were drafted fairly high, who have potential, but maybe just we're not in a great situation or what have you. So to me, I'm looking at the Kevin Kings, I'm looking at the Sidney Jones, I'm looking at the Isaiah Olivers, guys who were drafted in the first couple of rounds, maybe like 4 years ago. And it kind of goes back to, I'm sure you remember, John, when Harbaugh first got here, when we signed Carlos Rogers, who ended up having some really good years in San Francisco. Now, he was drafted by the Washington Commanders. Just in the first round, he basically did nothing in Washington, but we bring him in, and in our scheme, he did really well. And I think that there's a lot of guys who could have similar careers to that. Mm-hmm. So they come to San Francisco. It's a great situation. We have a great defensive coach in D'Amico. So when it comes to cornerbacks, I would like to take a look at those younger guys who could come in on a cheap-ish 1-year deal. They maybe want to come to a good defense where they have success, and then maybe get a larger contract afterwards. Kind of, you talked earlier about Kerry Hyder, for example. So he comes to this defense, gets good coaching. He's surrounded by a lot of good players. He puts up numbers, then he gets the contract with Seattle. So those are the guys I'm looking at. I don't think we're going to splash big in free agency at all. But I would be looking at those under the radar guys. Now, in a dream world, I think it would be actually pretty cool to get a guy like Justin Reed, who's a young safety, brother of Eric Reed, who used to play with the Niners. In a dream scenario, I'd like to have him on the team, but I just think he's probably going to be out of our price range.
Yeah. I want to say hello to Wanda. She says, sup, and I agree with her, corner and safety. Before I look at the other comments, she just dropped a $5 super chat. Appreciate your great support. As I mentioned, when anyone donates to the channel, for whatever the reason, I'm glad that you guys enjoy the content. Appreciate the super chat. So shout out to Wanda. She's been very generous. She's been very, very generous to this channel. So I want to say thank you. Thank you very much. Let me read what she said. She said, Jason Verrett to a 1-year prove-it deal while Ambry Thomas catches up or rolls with the future in Ambry. I think Ambry, but we need depth. First of all, that's a lot to put all together. But first, let's look at the first part. I think Jason Verrett, if we do sign him, it's going to be very, very cheap. He missed the entire year, and I know he wants to prove it. If he's willing to come back for the 49ers on a very, very cheap deal, the thing that I'm very worried about is that 4.5 years of injuries. That is not something you don't want. He's gonna be 31 years old next year, so that's another good concern. So John Lynch last year tried to pay him, a good salary. He turned it down for a prove-it deal. I bet he wants to prove it with the 49ers. His market is not going to be really good. We'll see what happens. Well, when it comes to injured players, I don't know what the Niners are going to do. I think they're trying to move away from that. So that's the first part. Ambry Thomas, the second part, Ambry Thomas catches up or rolls with the future in Ambry. Yeah, as I mentioned, Ambry Thomas looked really good near the end of the year. He had some issues in his first couple of starts, a lot of penalties, but then he finally became a consistent player. As I mentioned, Ambry Thomas, he's the future. And when it comes to Jason Verrett's for a 1-year prove-it deal, why not? But we don't know what's going to happen. Of course, another player who probably wants to prove it is Raheem Mostert. The question is, how much is he going to want? Because I remember the year before 2020, he asked for a lot of money. So hopefully he wants to prove it. So thank you very much, Wanda. There's a few other comments I want to say. Gonzalo, this guy's from Belize. International 49er fans is like all my international friends. I have a lot of international European 49er fans, but I got one here. Gonzalo said, "Hey, John Jay, I know the topic has changed, but Trey got hit hard because Shanahan ran him at the first as first option." Yep. So hopefully,
John, if I could hop in there with Gonzalo's comment, you're totally right. I like when I was watching that game at Arizona, Trey's first start, I hated so many of the play calls in that. Like when it was 3rd and 1, and it's like, it clearly a quarterback option, and it's a quarterback option, and then 4th and 1, the same. Like I that play calling in that game drove me crazy because I actually think we could have won that game.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, all right, Tommy Huxley. This is something that I do want to ask you. How many of our players will the Sea Chickens, also known as Seahawks, as I mentioned, he's our comedian, steal this offseason? So I want to ask you, do you think we're going to lose players to the Seahawks? Because something's telling me we will. So I want to get your thoughts on that.
I'm not 100% sure on their cap situation, but I wouldn't be surprised if either DJ Jones or Arden Key end up there if we can't bring him back. And I think possibly Arden Key. Yeah, I could see a few guys going there. You know what I would hate so much, and it could happen, is I would hate if Raheem Mostert went there. That would suck. Because the Seahawks, almost as much as the Niners, love to run the football. So, maybe they throw some money at him. But yeah, I mean, the Seahawks, that's kind of what the Seahawks do. They've done it, they took DJ Reed, Akella Witherspoon, Kerry Hyder. Over the years, I remember back in the day, one of my favorite players when I was younger was Julian Peterson, and he signed for the Seahawks. So they tend to do that. And yeah, it's kind of annoying.
Yep. All right, let's go back to. I want to say hello to my boy Don Lovato is in the house. What's up, man? Picture with Biggie. For those who are too young to know that Biggie, a famous rapper, he passed away. He said we need some secondary where players turn around and defend the ball, not have their backs on the ball. And this thing is one thing that I actually want to address. Since 2011, they've been changing the rules on how corners have been defending. That's why receivers have been catching, like almost 10 catches per game, top receivers, because the way the rule is. First, they said you have to look at the ball if you want to bat the ball down. Then they said, no, you have to look at the receiver and try to bat the ball down, facing the receiver. Then you can't do that no more. Now you can't even bump anymore, the 5-yard bump no more. So I wanted to say that because that's very annoying. So hopefully the NFL starts to realize that you're basically making a handicap for cornerbacks. And I think that's why one of the reasons why a lot of teams don't value the cornerback no more is because of these idiotic rules. But I do want the NFL to let the corners play, let them be hands-on. I know there's certain things you cannot do as a corner. You cannot choke a receiver, when they're trying to catch the ball. You can't hit them before they catch the ball. But if they're just a little like shove, one of the things I do not like is all these little ticky-tacky pass interference. So Don Lovato, I agree with you. I do want a receiver, but when it comes to the rules of that, that is not something that I like. What are your thoughts about Don Lovato's comment?
I agree. I think that was like one of the big things that, I think our defense played really, really well last year, especially when you factor in, like, going into the year, our top 2 cornerbacks supposedly were going to be Jason Verrett and Emmanuel Mosley. Now, Verrett, week 1, we know what happened. Emmanuel Mosley also ended up missing a bunch of time. So we were down and we were desperate. That's why we signed Josh Norman. That's why we signed Drake Kirkpatrick, who were both disasters. But, at the end of the day, I think that was one thing missing from our defense, is that we didn't really get the turnovers from the cornerback position. If you think back to 2019, when we had that Super Bowl run, Sherman had a bunch of interceptions. Mosley had some too. But that's like the one thing that we were lacking on in terms of just forcing turnovers where having cornerbacks who can take advantage of our pass rush, because I think a lot of our cornerbacks, and maybe this is just because a lot of guys who weren't really expected to contribute had to, maybe they were like taking a conservative approach where they're like, hey, look, just don't get beat deep. Whereas if you have those guys like Mosley, who's been in the defense for a while, where they can take those risks, where they can, try and read the quarterback's eyes and get those big splash plays like interceptions. So it'd be definitely nice to get cornerbacks who can turn around. As for the pass interference, I hate defensive pass interference. I mean, it's a rule that, as you said, it needs to be in place for certain things. But I just think so many times where it's like someone just does like that, and it's like, oh, here's 30 yards. To me, that's just crazy. I would like it if they really relaxed on the defensive pass interference rules. And now it's funny to read all the comments coming through. There was a comment earlier about like what the offensive line is going to look like next year. To me, I am kind of hoping that it's going to be Trent Williams left tackle. We bring back Lakin at left guard. I'd like Alex Mack back for one more year at center. The right side of the offensive line is going to be interesting because we have McGlinchey coming back from an injury, and I think some people are kind of torn on Mike McGlinchey. I think he's a good right tackle, but he's not great. I would like to think that Aaron Banks can take over that right guard spot. But personally, I would like to bring back Daniel Brunskill on a one-year deal, not to start. But Brunskill is a guy who can play almost any position on the offensive line. So, it's almost inevitable that at least one offensive lineman will get hurt. So if you can have a guy like Brunskill who has a ton of experience come in and play, I think that's really valuable. As for some of the Golden State Warrior talk going on, I mean, the Warriors have one of the best records in basketball. Yeah. So it was a bummer yesterday losing to the Mavericks like that, but I think
all right. Yeah, well, we could talk about the Warriors, but we're talking 49ers.
Let's stick with the Niners.
All right, let's say hello to some people because there's been a lot of comments that I've missed. I want to say hello to Joe. He says, "Go Niners! Thanks for hopping on. Appreciate it." Wanda said, "Lincoln, Thomas, and Arden Key." Let's see. Of course, she's a big fan of Raheem Mostert, and we'll see what happens. Remember, these players are injured, and they want to prove it. Hopefully, they want to prove it so badly that they will come back on very cheap deals. Let's see. Gonzalo said, "I am not sold on re-signing injury-prone players." I agree. Never been a fan of that. That goes back to Trent Baalke. People forget Trent Baalke going back to the late, even before Harbaugh came in, because Baalke was here before Harbaugh. So it's been something I just don't get. Wanda says that's secondary coaching. All right. True. Tommy says Westbrook is the GOAT. All right. Wanda says at Gonzalo says Niners stated Mosley surgery was needed and he needed to return healthier than he ever been with the Niners. So hopefully, and we also have Kinlaw who came off of surgery as well. So hopefully he also comes back well. Tommy says DJ Jones goes to the sea. Well, okay, let's not read that. All right, Don says Westbrook. Okay, all right, let's not talk about that stuff. All right, and we don't need to talk about basketball. All right, Niners will prioritize Jones. They have to. Kinlaw isn't dependable.
Yeah, Kinlaw, he's I think he's a big X factor going into next year because clearly he has a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who can really just he can take over a game, and we saw it at South Carolina. He had some plays in his rookie year, but Kinlaw just been in a really bad situation because his rookie year, and it's really difficult for defensive linemen to come to transition to the NFL game when you have offensive linemen who are much bigger, more athletic, stronger. They're much more like a better craft at their games. So, and then Kinlaw comes in, it's COVID. You can't really practice. Then he gets hurt. He's had a lingering knee issue. So, but I really do I like Javon Kinlaw. I mean, if the guy can stay healthy, I think he could be a force. But I think he's such a big question mark going in. And I think what happens with DJ Jones could be a major reflection on what they think about Javon Kinlaw. If they feel like if they throw big money at DJ, then they might be like, it's because we don't really trust Kinlaw to come back. Whereas if we let DJ Jones walk without making a huge effort to re-sign him, that could be a case of they're like, oh, we have a lot of faith in Kinlaw. So, a lot of good comments coming in too.
Yeah.
But just wanted to say that about a Kinlaw,
I'm trying to catch up with all the comments because I don't want to miss any of them. CG Ruthless, we were talking about our boy. What's up, man? Also, if you have not heard, Shifty, my boy, will be on CG Ruthless Sports this week. So make sure you are subscribed to Shifty's channel, my channel, and CG Ruthless Sports. Wanda says, oh, yeah, that she will throw a tomato. I kind of agree, bulky. And, of course, we talked about already Moster, if he signs a minimum. I want to say hello to Debbie. I've never seen you before, but thank you very much for hopping on. Question, are people actually saying we will trade George Kittle? And speaking of that, I want to get your thoughts on this. I already know. I already talked about it before. I don't know where all this stuff is coming from. It's coming from social media. So, Debbie, I don't want to trade George Kittle. He plays very physical. That's why, he has those injuries situation. Hopefully he plays less physical because for whatever the reason, he always wants to play physical. He goes against his coaches, and his coaches tell him to stop playing physical. But that's one of the things I think he needs to slow down. So what are your thoughts on Debbie's question? Is this even something we should even talk about?
Trading George Kittle? Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely not. No way. There's so many things that Kittle brings to the team. And to me, Kittle had a bit of a down year in terms of receiving, but he still had over 900 yards. He still made incredible plays. His blocking is insane. He's an absolute leader. He honestly could be, you could argue that Kittle is the face of the franchise, which is just wild to think about as a tight end. I mean, you just don't see that. It would take a lot for me to trade George Kittle. I'll put it that way. I think it would be what I would want for George Kittle would be very unreasonable to any other team. I would expect a lot in return for George Kittle, and to the point where to me, it's probably, it seems like it was maybe Grant Cohn who brought that up. And my guess is that he's probably looking for some clicks or whatever. So, that's silly talk, so
anyway, Tommy says Aaron Banks is a left guard right now. Yeah, well, one thing that for a lot of people, and we talked about it, I love to do scouting reports on the top players, and Aaron Banks had a 4th round grade, and he was basically a center / guard. So we'll see how Aaron Banks, but next year he has to play. Let's see. Let's go back to the comments. We have a lot. All right. Let's move on. Let's see. Gonzalez says running backs that return from surgeries are rarely the same before. Hey, and that's the thing about Mostert. That's a little worrisome. I think he's 30 years old. Running backs start to die down at 30 because all of the toughness that they have to deal with. Like Derrick Henry, I worry about him next year when he comes back. I don't know if he's going to be really well. And that's the thing about running backs. That worries me. So I agree with that. Tommy says we're friends with Debbie. We used to rope with her. Oh, cool. So Tommy knows Debbie. Thank you very much, Debbie. Wanda says, "What is Shifty's channel?" I'll sub. Let her know where she can find your channel.
Type in Shifty's 49ers talk, and it should pop up. I hope so. If it doesn't, then I'm in trouble.
All right, let's try to find some comments. Everyone's interacting, which is cool. All right, let me remove the comments and basically just type in Shifty's 49ers talk and you will find his channel. All right, and let's help Shifty get to what's your next milestone? What is your next milestone?
I have 370 about 375 subscribers. So I think 400 and then 500. That's gonna be the big one.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Wanda. I appreciate you.
All right.
That's
That'd
awesome.
be 5 first-round picks for Kittle. All right. Yeah, that Kittle talk. All right. Let's move on. All right. Let's look at this. Let's look at this comment. Don says, "What's going on with D Ford? Are the Niners done with them?" Right now, Don, I do not have any information about D Ford, but he basically is receiving 4.7 million of injury money. I don't know if they're going to pay him because I think he's owed 12 million overall. So if they are just paying him that, maybe they just want to pay his injury money, those incentives money, and hopefully that money when he gets cut rolls back with us if he is cut. But I do not know anything about D Ford. Do you know anything about D Ford?
I don't. I feel like I looked it up because one of the websites that I use to look at like cap numbers and stuff is overthecap.com. And I feel like recently I saw it where if we cut him post June 1st, that we would have saved a decent amount of money. But now I think we maybe saved 2 million. It's a little tricky because God, D Ford is like on paper, he's the perfect fit for what we do in terms of his ability. But obviously, the ability that you really need in football is availability. So it's just a bummer that he can't be out there because when you see D Ford out there, when you have like D Ford and Bosa and Armstead and all these guys, it's really hard to stop. So I don't really know what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if the injury just linger, and it's a back injury, which is like brutal. I can only imagine. But I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe ends up retiring, and then I'm not sure what the cap ramifications would be. But at the end of the day, when it comes to D Ford, if he gives us anything, I'm happy, but I don't expect anything. So
All right. Crazy Juice says, "Well, now you have 378 subscribers. Let's try to get him
hey,
400. Those little small milestones when it comes to subscribers. Remember, as a person who actually grind and it's almost at 1.2k, do your little those little milestones. Basically 250 was a goal that I was going to do this thing for just for fun. I got to 500 and I was all right, it's getting real. I got to 750, and then once I got to 750 it became really real. When I got to 900 I was like, oh man, I'm almost there. So all these little moments will remind us, wow, look at the hard work we have done. So thank you very much, Crazy Juice, for letting us know. And then sub to Shifty and CG Sports. Cool. And CG says, thank you. All right. D Ford. Yep. As I mentioned, yeah, we do not know a lot of information about him yet. Tommy says, don't sub to CG. Tommy A is a funny guy. Cool. Anyway, for sure, CG wrote this. All right. Everyone's talking to each other, which is really cool. All right, let's look at that. Yeah, Tommy. Yeah, we will cut D Ford after June 1. We will save more money, and I have to say we have to because in 2 seasons, actually, this was now entering year 3. He came here in 2019, played 8 games, missed 8 regular season games, played in the playoffs. Then last year did not play any games. He played 1 play and then did not play again. This year he played like the first 5 games as a part-time starter, did not return. So I will let him go past June 1st. All right. Let's look at some 49ers question. Let's see. Stephon Gilmour talks. Yes. I don't know if you heard about Richard Sherman talking that we need to get Stephon Gilmour. What are your thoughts on Stephon Gilmour? Should we pick him up? Should we listen to Richard Sherman?
I mean, yeah, Stephon Gilmour, not just a couple of years ago, was, I believe he was the defensive player of the year, or what have you. For me, when it comes to Stephon, I think he is a very good player, even at his age. I think he's maybe 32. I think all of this will just come down to money. And at the end of the day, I don't think that the 49ers in this type of defense that we value cornerbacks compared to other types of defenses, where I think John Lynch and the front office, they want to build from the front back in terms of the defense. Like we want to have like an elite defensive line. We already have a great linebacking core with Warner and Greenlaw and Alshire, but for the right price, yeah, of course, I'm not going to say no to a guy like Stephon Gilmour, but I just think that there's going to be a team out there that will be willing to pay more. Now, the question then becomes, would Stephon Gilmour maybe be willing to take a bit of a discount to come to a team that's closer to winning a Super Bowl? So, for example, maybe he goes to the Jets, who play a similar defense to us and a defense that he would do well in, and they could probably pay him a lot more. But if you're going to the Jets, it's like, well, you're not going to be going anywhere because they stink. Whereas if you come to the Niners, you could potentially, we were close to getting to the Super Bowl. So if you come here, maybe he takes a bit of a pay cut to come to San Francisco. At the end of the day, I don't think he'll come here just because I just don't think we have the funds. We don't have the cap space to make it happen where it'll meet the point where he'll just be like, no, I'm worth more than this in terms of like a contract numbers. So I'd like to see it happen, sure, but I just don't think it will.
Yep.
I think more likely like Jason Verrett. Maybe we bring back Verrett, as you mentioned, John. Maybe we bring back Verrett on like a minimum deal. And look, Stephon Gilmour is definitely a better player than Verrett. But when you factor the money in, maybe you just throw it's like a 1-year deal for Verrett, and you kind of fingers crossed you get like 2020 where he stays healthy and can make some plays.
All right, David. David says if we cut D Ford after June 1st, we'll save $7 million with 4.9 dead money hit before June 1st. We'll save $2 million with 9.8 dead money. So yes, so we have to wait, until that June 1st, and that money will carry over, which is a plus. Anyway, yeah, when it comes to Stephon Gilmour had a really good career with Buffalo. A lot of people forget he was from Buffalo. Then he went to the New England Patriots, and when he went to the Patriots, he had Pro Bowl years, like top defensive player of the year candidate, seasons. But then in the last several years, he's been regressing. He's been dealing with injuries, and one of the things that a lot of people should worry about is he still that player. I think he's going to be 32, 33 years old, so he's getting up there in age. He's not the same player he once was. So I will stay away from Stephon Gilmour, and he wants to get paid. Look at Patrick Peterson and Richard Sherman last year. Two guys, with great resumes. They wanted money. Look what happened to Richard Sherman. Nobody signed him because there was no money. So I'll stay away from Stephon Gilmour. I have to say what's up. I have to read this comment, but I try my best to not even mention this person. But I want to say TOP is in the house with the $5 super chat. Appreciate it. Grant Cohen looks like the type of guy to go to sleep sucking on his thumb after drinking warm milk from his baby bottle. First of all, thank you very much for the super chat, and I am not going to even touch that comment. For those who know, I don't watch Grant, channel. Not the biggest fan. I don't have any issues with them, but shout out to TOP. He made me read a comment, so that's probably the only way you will make me read a comment of who. But shout out to TOP. He is a Bears fan. He's a Bears fan. So see, I have a great NFL community as well. So that's about it with that. So all right, let's go back to the comments and see some 49er questions. But that was anyway, is what it is. But anyway, so let's see. And you guys can ask your 49er questions. Feel free to ask your 49er questions. So that was just unexpected. But hey, if you drop a super chat, I will read it. The funniest super chat. Speaking of that, I wanted to put a little bit of funny, on this show. But I had the Green Bay Packers fan on, and there was a Packers fan who was just out of line. He was saying a lot of disrespectful stuff, and I think Tommy was in here, on that chat, and then he left a super chat, and he was saying this guy needs to be timed out. So I do get a lot of funny in the chat, But as long as it doesn't get personal or a little bit disrespectful, I'll let you guys have fun in the chat. So that's about it. Let's see. Wanda says Rob Shoe is legit, and Jason Aponte, Jack, and Lombardi to avoid. All right. Anyway, I know Rob Shoe. I don't know if you know him. I know.
I think I've seen a little bit.
I know Jason Aponte. He has a YouTube channel. I think Jack is Jack Hammer, and there's also a guy named David Lombardi. I think I know David Lombardi more than all these other guys, but I know who these guys are. So yeah, we have a giant 49er community. So it's always fun to know the 49ers community. So yeah. Anyway, all right. Debbie says, question, did you hear about Brady's movie? I did not. Did you know about this, Shifty?
Yeah, it's something to do with like there's like 4 ladies who go to the Super Bowl to watch. I think it's like when he's with the Buccaneers, it's like 4 elderly ladies who go to see and check out the Super Bowl that he's playing in, and something to that effect. And I think Tom Brady is involved with the movie. So, but that's about the extent that I know. But I've heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, if you have any more 49er questions, so we can read it for you. If any questions about the 49ers, let us know with that. But before, if there's any more other questions, I want to remind everybody. I want to remind everybody who you are again. For those who are watching, let them know who you are. Let them know what your channel, what you do. If you have any social media, so they can also follow you there. Shifty, thanks again for hopping on. As always, your 3rd time. You're catching up to all these great members who always hop on a regular. But let the fans know one last time. This is your moment. Let them know. Promote your channel. Let them know who you are.
Cool. Yeah. So Shifty 49ers talk. If you search Shifty 49ers, it should pop up on YouTube. Big 49er fan, been a fan my entire life. I was born in San Francisco. I wasn't raised here, but I actually have been living back in San Francisco for about 11 or 12 years. So I do live in the city right now. Yeah, my oldest memories are watching Niner games, and it's definitely probably my biggest passion. My favorite thing to do when it comes to the Niners is to stream the games and just kind of have like my like live genuine reactions. And I love talking free agency. I love previewing the games, talking about the games after it's over, the draft, all of that stuff is right up my alley. And in terms of social media, I don't really have a huge social media presence. Of course, I have like the YouTube channel. On Twitter, my handle is Kalen, which is Kalen, Kalen's Take. And I believe I have that in my about section in YouTube. So if you search for me on YouTube, you'll see my Twitter handle in my about section. Beyond that, what I typically like to do is I just do videos and talk about football, talk about the Niners, and where we're going, my opinions on it. And honestly, at the end of the day, I just like having a lot of fun with it. But yeah, it's just it's cool to see the community that's here. Like John's like a great ambassador for the team and for the community, and just being able to interact with all these people. And there's, in the short time that I've been doing this, because I started making videos and streaming, like it was almost like halfway through the season. So it's awesome to see the support and everything. So, Optimus, TOP. Well, thank you. Yeah.
He says he says Shifty looks like a Microsoft CEO. And listen, TOP, he's a really good guy. Remember, I have a lot of great comedians here. So it's a badge of honor if they give you a nickname. So shout out to everyone. And I wanted to read this from Tommy Huxley. I want to find it first because a lot of comments came in. This is what I was talking about. Yeah, John Jay, that was that dude, the Packers guy, something. This guy was a clown. He told me to follow him on Twitter, but didn't. So yeah, yep, that was true. That was true. Yeah, I wanted to say that as well. All right. Yep. And yeah, David remembered him also. Yeah, like I said, you guys can have fun in the chat. Just be respectful to everybody, etc. Don't cross the line, certain things. But yeah, and shout out to 49ers Faithful Report. Great, great, great. Well, everyone, thanks for hopping on my second stream today. I really appreciate it. It's always good having Shifty on. As I mentioned, he's going to be a regular guest
Love it.
all the time. So, and we're working on a podcast together. We're not going to spoil it for you, but this guy's will be on my channel all off season, and we'll be talking 49ers football. So I really appreciate Shifty for hopping on. As always, this is the third time. He might even pass Peo Time, who has 4 times on the show. But with that said, everybody, this guy right here, this is John J, 49ers Ultimate Report. This guy, Shifty Sports Talk. We got to get him to 400. Got to get him to 400. Spread the word. This is Shifty Sports Talk. Thanks for hopping on as well. But with that said, everybody, I'm John J. This is the 49ers Ultimate Report. You guys have a good rest of your night or wherever the time is where you are living. And go Niners.